On July 9, 2025, a little after lunch, a white Toyota Camry pulled into my bay with the windows down in 90-degree heat. The driver was not panicking. She was resigned. She slid a folded estimate across my counter the way people hand over bad medical results. The dealership had told her the climate control unit was failing and that fixing it meant pulling the dashboard. The quote was $940. She had already started saving for it. Today, I am revealing why this exact repair is one of the most overcharged jobs in the entire Toyota world. Why the part that actually fails costs less than a fast food meal, and how a $15 fix in your driveway can solve a problem dealerships treat like major surgery. I have seen this scene more times than I can count. Summer hits, the air conditioning starts blowing hot on one side, or the temperature stops responding no matter what you set it to, and suddenly a driver is staring down a four-figure estimate for what they have been told is a complicated internal failure. And almost every single time, it is not. Here is what was actually happening in that Camry. The air conditioning compressor was fine, the refrigerant was full, the system was making cold air. It just was not letting that cold air reach the cabin properly, because a tiny plastic motor buried behind the glove box had stopped doing its job. That motor is called a blend door actuator. And on a huge number of Toyotas, it is the single most common reason your climate control goes wrong. The driver did not need a new HVAC unit. She did not need her dashboard removed. She needed about 15 minutes and a tube of grease. Let me explain how your Toyota actually controls temperature, because once you understand this, the entire repair stops being scary. When you turn the dial from cold to hot, you are not opening a valve or changing the refrigerant. Cold air is being produced constantly by the evaporator behind your dash. What changes is how much of that air gets routed past the heater core before it reaches you. A small flap, called a blend door, swings back and forth to mix cold and warm air to whatever temperature you asked for. That door does not move by magic. It is driven by a little electric motor the size of a deck of cards, full of small plastic gears. That motor is the blend door actuator. On dual-zone systems, the kind that lets the driver and passenger set different temperatures, there are at least two of these actuators, one per side. There are more for the vents and for the fresh air and recirculation flaps. Each one is a cheap plastic servo doing a simple mechanical job thousands of times over the life of the car. And plastic gears, turning under load, in the heat behind your dashboard, eventually wear. Tooth strips. The grease that was packed in at the factory dries out and turns to a stiff paste. The gear slips. And the moment that happens, the door stops landing where the computer told it to. This is where the symptoms come from, and they are textbook. Air blowing hot on one side and cold on the other, because one actuator moved and the other did not. Temperature that will not change no matter how far you turn the dial, because the door is jammed at one extreme. Air coming out of the wrong vents. Defrost when you wanted your feet. Feet when you wanted your face. And the dead giveaway, the one that makes a mechanic smile before he even pops the glove box. A clicking or ticking sound from behind the dash that gets louder when you adjust the temperature. That clicking is the actuator motor still spinning, still trying, but skipping over a stripped tooth like a key that no longer catches the lock. Now here is the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. The climate control unit is almost never broken. The wiring is fine. The computer that commands these doors, what Toyota calls the air conditioning amplifier, is fine. The thing that failed is a $15 to $40 plastic motor, and very often the gears inside it are not even broken, just gummed up with hardened grease. But that is not how the repair gets quoted, because the way the industry prices this job depends entirely on one question that most owners never think to ask. Which actuator is it, and where does it live? On some Toyota models, certain actuators are buried deep in the center of the dash, and reaching them genuinely does require pulling the dashboard, disconnecting airbags, and hours of labor. That is the worst-case scenario. And the worst-case scenario is exactly what tends to land on the estimate because it covers the shop no matter what they find, and because a big invoice with the word dashboard on it sounds serious enough that nobody argues. But on a huge number of Toyotas, the actuator that fails most often, the passenger side blend door actuator, is not buried at all. It sits right behind the glove box. You can touch it with your hand after removing one panel. The difference between a 15-minute glove box job and a 7-hour dash-out job is enormous, and the customer almost never knows which one they are actually being charged for. Think about what that means. The same part, the same failure, the same symptoms, can be a $15 driveway fix or a $1,000 dealership ordeal. And the only variable is whether someone bothered to check the easy location first. Shops are built around the expensive answer. A quick reach behind the glove box does not look impressive on an invoice. It does not justify the diagnostic fee. It does not move a $1,500 replacement part off the shelf. So the cheap path gets skipped, not always out of dishonesty, but because the entire system is designed around replacing assemblies rather than fixing components. The person who benefits from knowing the cheap path exists is you, and only you. So let me show you the cheap path. This is the part the dealership hopes you never learn. First, you confirm it is actually the blend door actuator and not something else. With the engine running and the air conditioning on, set the temperature to full cold, wait, then full hot, and listen. If one side refuses to change, if air comes from the wrong vents, or if you hear that telltale clicking from behind the dash when you adjust the dial, you are almost certainly dealing with an actuator. If instead the air is weak everywhere but the temperature does respond, that is a different problem, usually a clogged cabin air filter or a blower issue, and we will come back to that. And if the system is blowing nothing but warm air on both sides with no clicking at all, that points toward refrigerant or the compressor, which is genuinely a separate repair. The clicking and the one-sided behavior are your signature. That is the cheap fix talking. Once you have confirmed it, the access on most affected models is through the glove box. You open the glove box, squeeze the sides in to release the stops, and let it drop all the way down, or remove it entirely by taking out a few screws and unclipping the damper arm. Behind it, usually on the right side of the center console area, partly hidden under some plastic ducting, you will find the actuator. It is a small box with a couple of screws, often 3, and a single electrical connector, and it has a little white plastic arm sticking out of it that connects to the door linkage. On many of these, it is a Denso unit, and Denso builds them well, which is exactly why cleaning often works instead of replacing. Here is the genius of the fix, and why it costs $15 instead of $900. You unplug the connector, remove the few screws, and take the actuator out. Then you open it up. Inside, you will see the plastic gears, and very often you will find the original grease has dried into a hard, sticky film, or that the gears are simply dirty and binding. You clean all of that off, inspect the teeth, And if the gears are intact, you pack them with fresh white lithium grease, the same stuff that costs a few dollars at any auto parts store. You put it back together, reinstall it, plug it in, and that loud, erratic clicking that the dealership wanted $900 to silence is simply gone. Owners who have done this describe turning the temperature dial afterward and watching that little white arm glide up and down smoothly, with full hot and full cold restored on both sides for the price of a tube of grease. If a gear tooth is actually stripped and cleaning is not enough, you are still not in trouble because the replacement actuator itself is cheap. A genuine Toyota or Denso blend door actuator for these glove box locations is commonly in the $15 to $50 range, and it bolts in exactly where the old one came out: 3 screws and 1 plug. You are not pulling a dashboard. You are not touching an airbag. You are doing the same 15-minute job, just with a new part instead of a cleaned one. There is one more detail that matters, and it is where a lot of people get nervous for no reason. On Toyotas with automatic climate control, the system needs the actuators to know their home positions. After you reconnect everything, the climate module re-references the doors on its own. Many of these systems will run their own calibration sweep when you cycle the ignition or after the battery has been disconnected, driving each door to its end stops to relearn where fully open and fully closed actually are. You do not need a dealer computer for this on most models. You reconnect, you start the car, you let the system settle, and you test through the full temperature range. If everything moves and both sides respond, you are done. Now let me be honest with you, the way I always am, because knowing when this fix does not apply is just as valuable as knowing when it does. If your actuator is one of the deep dash-buried units rather than the glove box one, the part is still cheap, but the labor is real, and that may be a job worth paying for. If your air conditioning is warm on both sides with no clicking and no one-sided behavior, do not go chasing actuators. Look at refrigerant and the compressor instead. And if your airflow is weak everywhere before you spend $1, pull that cabin air filter, which lives right behind the same glove box you just opened. A clogged filter is another $15 item that dealerships love to fold into a $100 air conditioning service. While you have the glove box out for any reason, change it. You are already there. This is the mindset shift I want you to walk away with. A Toyota climate problem is not automatically a major repair. The most common version of it is a tiny plastic motor with tired gears, sitting in one of the easiest to reach spots in the entire car. And the gap between the cheap reality and the expensive quote is built almost entirely on the assumption that you will never look for yourself. The clicking behind your dash is not a death sentence. It is information. It is telling you exactly which $15 part to clean. I have watched people walk back to their cars genuinely a little angry, not because the fix was hard, but because of how close they came to paying $900 for a tube of grease and 15 minutes of work. Take that feeling and turn it into confidence. Before you authorize a dashboard repair, before you hand over a 4-figure estimate, open the glove box, listen for the click, and check the easy answer first. If this changed how you think about your Toyota's air conditioning, hit the like button so more drivers see it before summer drains their wallets. Subscribe if you want more mechanic-level fixes that keep your money where it belongs. And if you have ever been quoted a fortune for a repair that turned out to be simple, drop that in the comments because those stories are exactly what the dealerships hope you never share. The next video exposes another Toyota repair that shops quote sky high and that you can handle in your own driveway, and once you see it, You will never look at a service estimate the same way again.